Hello students, welcome back once again. You'll see in my project that I've moved Mario up a little ways. That's because today we're going to be dealing with gravity. So far, he moves around beautifully with nice tightly controlled animations, all very much under our control. And now we want to get Mario moving a little bit. When we think about gravity, we can think about all sorts of different things. The relationship between massive objects, the actual quantum dynamics of the subatomic particles in some of the different field states that define the way that objects interact in this way, but that's a little too much for programming class. We're just going to deal with as dumbed down a version as we can make work in our world. What is gravity? Well, it's something that makes things go down. So I'm going to create a method. Apply gravity. And in this, I'm just going to see if I can get a simple form of gravity to work. How do I get things to move down? Well, up in our mover, I move things sideways. What if I borrow this, and instead of moving sideways, I moved down by one? Remember, positive means down for the y-axis. All right, if I hit run, let's see what happens here. And, as always, I always do this. Make sure I put my method into my act. And now we see Mario is drifting downwards. There's a simple form of gravity being applied. There's a problem with this gravity though. It looks kind of like he's a feather just floating down really nicely, and we call this constant motion. But gravity is an acceleration. The value changes over time, little bit by little bit. So we need to make our value change over time. Now, I don't like this magic number. Let's create a new variable. Gravity. Let's set our gravity to 1 in our constructor, like we've been getting used to hopefully over time. And then I'm going to have this changed by the gravity amount. Let's just double check I didn't mess anything up. Looks great. And what I'm going to say is this. Each time we apply gravity, make gravity 1 stronger so that it accelerates. And you'll see, bam, gravity gets faster over time. But the problem with this here is that gravity's a little too fast. I don't know if I want my Mario falling quite that quickly. So I want to make this value a bit smaller to make it a bit more refined. So, oh, wait a sec. Gravity's already 1. That's pretty small. And, okay, what if I know, I can add a decimal. So gravity equals gravity plus 0.1 instead. All right, let's see what happens here. And let's see if this makes any difference to our code. There's an error going on here. For some reason, my green screen is not showing it, but I have a problem here that gravity is an integer. Integers aren't decimals. If we want to start working with decimals, we have to change our data type. We are now going to be using, in this case, something called a double. A double is something with a decimal value. And now we're going to be able to use that to actually make our guy drop. Now the error isn't showing up here, but we're going to have another error popping up here. Set location expects integers. Get x is an integer, get y is an integer, but gravity is now a double. I have to turn this double back into an integer. Luckily, I can. If I put this in brackets ahead of it, int, I'm telling Java, I want gravity to become an integer, actually, after everything is said and done. Convert it back to an integer. And when I do so, then that method is going to be happy and my code should compile. Now in this case, you'll see that my gravitation acceleration rate is significantly slower because I'm actually increasing it by 0.1 each time. I could actually change the initial gravity value to 0. What would this do? Well, it means he's not, the first moment I start, he's not moving yet. He starts at 0 motion and then increases in his gravity. What about if I made his initial gravity minus 4? Let's use a random value there. He starts by going up. Huh. That's a little bit odd. I'm going to put this back to 1 for now. But that upward motion is going to help us in our next lesson when we talk about jumping. But for now, make sure that your program has a customizable, and you should play around with some of these values, gravity. And before we move on, I did something, a big no-no here. 0.1, that's a magic number. Let's create a new variable for this. I'm going to call this the g-force. I'm going to set my g-force to equal that 0.1. And now I can use g-force in this place. Wow, that was a close call. Almost really embarrassing. All right, now we've generalized our code a little bit more. You can play around with those values, and you should have a more smooth feeling but realistic type of gravity. And in the next lesson, we will talk about, what did I say we're going to do? I forget now, but we're going to talk about something. See you then.